Okay, I'm just going to demonstrate here how I go about doing some of this gridding once I have this grid drawn lightly on the page. So I have done some of it over here, so I'm just continuing. When I'm doing some of these details, like areas of the face, or really any area that may be a little bit hard for you to do otherwise, I'm going to start by dividing up the grid into smaller squares. I recommend using your ruler to help with that. So I used my ruler to make sure that that was as accurate as possible. And I can do that as well over here, which I've already done. So that helps me see that within this square, that's where the lips are actually happening. And notice I'm just drawing really, really small, or really, really light lines, I should say. So I can see that that line kind of creates that negative shape there. That bottom line, I can see how there's actually quite a bit of open space down there. I can see how these really come together right there in that little area. And within that, I might see these smaller kind of details of this edge of this highlight. So I might put those in really lightly. This bottom portion of the nose, I can see where that part of the nostril goes, so it doesn't go all the way to the edge of the quarter. And where all of those kind of exist and hit this line. And this is where doing that earlier practice might help you, because you can know which of these lines are going to be more important and a little bit heavier. And which ones then are going to be softer edges. So I can see within that quarter. That's where the edge of the glasses are. And I keep looking at where do these lines hit within that quarter. So are they at the middle? Are they all the way up the top? That kind of thing. And I might look at where that line begins and ends to help me make sure that I'm getting it right. So I can even see in here I've got a little highlight there. And I'll keep going to do that edge. You may not always be able to draw every single little detail, so if you can't fit all the detail, try to do what you can or determine what's going to be most important. So here I can see that very little edge of the eye. Here I've got sort of a shadow there. I can kind of outline where that shadow will be. And that line I know is going to be a little bit thicker, so I can see this a little bit more clearly in real life than you can there. But I can see how that's kind of a double line or shape, that dark part, just like it was in the video. You can even see a little bit of the lashes there. So in those details, knowing a little bit of how the eye is constructed can help. But I also just do everything light so I can make changes. Here I can see how that eyelid, that top of that eyelid, connects to that line of the edge of the glasses. And anything that looks odd, if it's off, I know it's in approximately the right place. So if it looks like it's off, it's probably only off by just a little bit. Or I can re-measure rather than guess. Even this part here, these shadows underneath the eye, again, if I make those too dark, it's going to look odd, but I can make them light, and that can help to just give some definition. So later on, those will just be shaded, but right now, I can just add a little bit of an indication. Doing the eyebrow up here, so again, I'm seeing where that is, that kind of ordering of these detailed areas. And again, this is an area where it's an eyebrow, but it really is just going to look just more like a shadow. So you don't have to necessarily get everything. And if it seems like it disappears, you can just let that disappear. And that'll be part of what makes your image look photographic. If I see an area like this with a highlight, again, I can even kind of draw that where that highlight is going to be. And I have some of that background knowledge, so I know that, again, I'm going to want to make this area here pop out. And there's this little shadow here too. So putting in just those little suggestions of the form. Knowing what edges are going to be important. Okay. And it doesn't have to look perfect right now. I'm just going to keep going, just kind of trusting this process. I can make corrections and changes later as well. So even things like this, where I wouldn't necessarily notice that in real life, but that's one of the benefits of using gridding. It can help you notice and capture some of these little fleeting details like that. So again, just sort of outlining some of these shadowed areas. Very, very lightly. So a lot of this, I noticed that what I was doing at first wasn't very noticeable to the camera. So I'm making a little heavier than I might otherwise, but still very, very, very light. So again, putting in all these details like that edge of the glasses. Notice it doesn't matter as much if my lines are perfect. What's really important is getting the proportions right. So here, because of the distortion of my glasses, again, another detail you might not notice otherwise is that the face, the side of the face, doesn't actually quite line up in the photograph because of how my glasses distort it. See how we have that angle here? Line up with the mouth, just like we learned about. So lot of this will start to look more natural as I shade, and I can help you with some of those details. But I can at least get everything in proportion as I go here. Finish up some of the hairline here so you can see this come together. So again, I'm always going square by square, making sure that I'm working on the correct one, using the letters and numbers. So in here, a lot of these shapes are sort of very soft, so just try to get the edges of the shapes you see. Some of these are just light areas and then dark areas. So I can just draw edges on those areas. And these are places too where I might have to then go to the digital photo to see more clearly what's going on. And so that'll help me see what that edge should really be. So again, I don't have to get every hair. A lot of this will come with the shading after the shape. So I'm just trying to get any shapes that I see, any defined edges. Right, that seems like a good place. With this square here, finishing out this square, we'll end the video. So again, if it's unclear here, I'm just going to keep all those edges very soft. If it's unclear, it probably means it has a soft edge, so just keep it light and soft. And a lot of this is looking at what shapes do you really see versus what do you expect to see. So I'm looking at the negative space and positive space, making sure that these negative spaces are the right size and shape. If they're not, then that means that somewhere I've gone awry with the positive space with the shape I'm drawing. So the shapes in the negative space are just as important. You can look to see how low these are hanging, how they're not quite the same. That's going to help. All right, I hope this was helpful.